My name is Private First Class Marcus Webb, and I served as a scout with the 2nd Infantry Division during World War II. This is my account of what happened in October 1944, in a place that doesn't appear on any official military map. What I'm about to tell you has been classified for decades, but I'm an old man now, and the truth needs to be told before I'm gone. It started at Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, where our unit was completing advanced reconnaissance training before our scheduled deployment to Europe. The war was entering its final phase, or so we thought, and the Army needed every skilled scout they could get. We spent our days learning to move silently through hostile territory, read enemy positions, and survive behind enemy lines. I was good at it. Born and raised in rural Montana, I'd been hunting and tracking since I could walk. The Army recognized that skill and fast-tracked me into reconnaissance training. By October 44, I'd completed more field exercises than most men twice my age. That's probably why they chose me for the assignment. Webb, front and center, barked Sergeant Howard Briggs during our morning formation. He was a hard man, career Army, with a face like weathered leather and eyes that had seen things he'd never talk about. I stepped forward, saluting. "Yes, Sergeant." "Report to Major Caldwell's office immediately. You're being temporarily reassigned." The other men exchanged glances. Temporary reassignments during training were unusual, especially this close to deployment. I made my way across the base to headquarters, my mind running through possibilities. Had I screwed up somehow? Was I being sent home? Major Robert Caldwell's office was sparse, a desk, 2 chairs, a filing cabinet, and a large map of the United States on the wall. The Major himself was in his mid-40s, with graying temples and the kind of exhausted look that came from too many 16-hour days. Standing beside him was someone I didn't expect, a civilian. The man wore an expensive suit, completely out of place on a military base, and carried a leather briefcase. He was thin, pale, with round spectacles that caught the light. "Private Webb," Major Caldwell said, gesturing to a chair. "This is Dr. Samuel Winters from the War Department. Sit down. What we're about to discuss is classified top secret. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." I sat, my back straight, hands on my knees. Dr. Winters opened his briefcase and pulled out several photographs. He laid them on the desk, and I leaned forward to look. They showed a dense forest, pine and birch trees, thick undergrowth, terrain that looked like northern Wisconsin or Minnesota. "Private, have you ever heard of Camp Hale?" Dr. Winters asked. His voice was quiet, measured, academic. "No, sir." "Good. That means security protocols are working." He pushed another photograph forward. This one showed a military installation, barracks, training facilities, watchtowers. Camp Hale is a classified training facility approximately 120 miles northwest of here, near the Michigan border. It was established in 1942 to train specialized mountain and winter warfare units. "Like the 10th Mountain Division, sir?" "Precisely." Dr. Winters adjusted his spectacles. However, Camp Hale also served another purpose. The surrounding forest, approximately 40,000 acres, was used for experimental navigation and survival training. Extremely difficult terrain, designed to push men to their absolute limits. I waited. There was clearly more to this story. Major Caldwell took over. 3 weeks ago, a training exercise went wrong. A squad of 8 men, experienced scouts, some of the best we have, entered a designated sector for a 5-day field operation. They were supposed to navigate to 3 checkpoints and return to base. And they didn't return, sir? "Oh, they returned," the major said grimly. "All 8 of them. But something happened out there. They came back, different." Dr. Winters pulled out more documents, medical reports, psychiatric evaluations, pages dense with text. Within 24 hours of their return, all 8 men exhibited severe psychological distress. Panic attacks, paranoia, violent outbursts. 3 had to be physically restrained. They kept repeating the same phrases. It's in the trees, don't listen to the voices, we didn't find the checkpoint, it found us. A chill ran down my spine despite the warm office. 2 of them have since taken their own lives, the major continued, his voice heavy. The others are in psychiatric care. Whatever they experienced out there broke them. Completely. I looked between the 2 men. With respect, sir, what does this have to do with me? Dr. Winters leaned forward. We need to know what happened to those men. We need someone to go into that sector, retrace their route, and investigate. Someone with exceptional tracking and survival skills. Someone who can handle being alone in difficult terrain. You want me to go into the same forest that drove 8 trained soldiers insane? We want you to scout it, Major Caldwell corrected. Observe, document, report. You won't be engaging with anything. If you encounter something you can't explain, you withdraw immediately and report. That's an order. Why not send an entire platoon? Because we don't know what we're dealing with, Dr. Winters said. A large force creates noise, draws attention. We need someone who can move quietly, observe without being observed. A ghost in the woods. That's what scouts do, isn't it? He wasn't wrong. Major Caldwell slid a folder across the desk. Inside are maps, the original squad's planned route, and all available information. You leave tomorrow at 0600. You'll be equipped with standard reconnaissance gear, plus a camera to document anything unusual. You'll carry no dog tags, no identification. If something goes wrong. I was never there, I finished. Exactly. I looked at the photographs again. They were just trees, just forest. But something about them made me uneasy. The way the shadows fell. The density of the undergrowth. It looked like the kind of place where you could get turned around easily. Why didn't the original squad just leave when things got strange? I asked. Dr. Winters and Major Caldwell exchanged a look. According to their debriefing, before they deteriorated, Dr. Winters said slowly, they tried to leave multiple times. But the forest wouldn't let them. They'd walk for hours in what should have been a straight line back to camp, and they'd end up exactly where they started. Their compasses stopped working. The stars weren't in the right positions. Time moved strangely, hours would pass in what felt like minutes, or vice versa. That's impossible, sir. That's what we thought too. The major's expression was grim. But 8 highly trained soldiers don't collectively hallucinate the same impossible events. Something is out there, Webb. Something we don't understand. And if Germany or Japan somehow weaponizes whatever it is before we figure it out. He didn't need to finish that sentence. I took the folder. When do I leave? I spent the rest of that day preparing and studying the materials. The maps showed the designated sector, officially called Training Area 7, as a roughly circular region about 5 miles in diameter. 3 checkpoints were marked, Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie. The original squad's mission was to navigate to each checkpoint in sequence, spending 1 night at each location, then return to the base camp on the 5th day. They'd made it to Checkpoint Alpha on day 1, logs confirmed it. They'd made it to Checkpoint Bravo on day 2. But they never reached Checkpoint Charlie. On day 5, they stumbled out of the forest at a completely different location, 12 miles from where they'd entered, disoriented and terrified. The mission logs included brief excerpts from their initial debriefing. Corporal James Mitchell, the trees, they moved when we weren't looking. I know how that sounds, but I swear to God, the forest changed. Paths that were there in the morning were gone by afternoon. Private Leonard Hayes, we heard voices. Familiar voices. My mother, calling for me. But she died in 1938. She couldn't be there. Sergeant David Kowalski, something was following us. Always just out of sight. We'd hear branches breaking, footsteps that matched our pace. When we stopped, it stopped. When we moved, it moved. But we never saw what it was. I read through everything twice, memorizing details, trying to find rational explanations. Maybe they'd encountered enemy saboteurs, German agents operating in the U.S. Maybe there was a natural phenomenon, like gas seeping from the ground, that caused hallucinations. Maybe the stress of training had finally broken them. But deep down, I knew those explanations didn't fit. That evening, I packed my gear. Standard M1 Garand rifle, ammunition, combat knife, canteen, rations for 7 days, 2 days more than planned, compass, maps, flashlight, first aid kit, rope, and the camera Dr. Winters had provided. A Kodak Medalist, military grade, in a weatherproof case. I also packed something unofficial, a small Bible my mother had given me when I enlisted. I wasn't particularly religious, but it felt right to have it. As I was finishing, Sergeant Briggs appeared in the doorway of the barracks. Webb, a word. We stepped outside into the cool October evening. Stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. I don't know where they're sending you, Briggs said quietly, and I don't need to know. But I've seen that look before, the look Caldwell had today. Whatever this is, it's bad. I can handle it, Sergeant. I'm sure you can handle combat. I'm sure you can handle difficult terrain. But Webb. He paused, choosing his words carefully. There are things in this world that don't make sense. Things the Army doesn't train you for. I saw some of them in the Philippines in 18. Things that made grown men pray like children. I wanted to dismiss his words as superstition, but his expression stopped me. This was a man who'd faced enemy machine guns without flinching. If things get strange, he continued, trust your instincts. Not your training, not your orders. Your instincts. They'll tell you when to fight and when to run. You understand? Yes, Sergeant. He handed me something, a small silver medallion on a chain. St. Christopher, patron saint of travelers. I'm not asking you to believe in it, he said. Just wear it. Can't hurt, might help. I took it, fastening it around my neck. Thank you, Sergeant. He nodded and walked away, leaving me alone with the stars and my thoughts about what tomorrow would bring. The truck ride to Camp Hale took 4 hours, starting before dawn. I rode in the back with my gear and a driver who'd been instructed not to speak to me. We traveled on back roads, through small Wisconsin towns still sleeping in the pre-dawn darkness. As the sun rose, I got my first real look at the landscape. Rolling hills covered in dense forest, lakes glinting like mirrors, the kind of wilderness where you could walk for days without seeing another human being. Beautiful and isolating in equal measure. Camp Hale appeared suddenly, a cluster of buildings surrounded by high fences and guard towers. Much smaller than Camp McCoy, more secretive. The guards at the gate checked our papers thoroughly before waving us through. I was taken directly to a briefing room where Dr. Winters waited with another man, Captain Frank Morrison, who'd be my immediate contact. Captain Morrison was younger than I expected, maybe 30, with sharp features and alert eyes. He spread a detailed topographical map on the table. Private Webb, I'll be monitoring your progress from base camp here. He pointed to a location on the map. You'll enter Training Area 7 at this access point. Your primary objective is to reach checkpoints Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie, in that order, documenting conditions and any anomalies. And if I encounter whatever affected the last squad, you withdraw immediately and report. We're not asking you to engage with anything dangerous. This is reconnaissance only. He pulled out a radio set, a handheld SCR-536 walkie-talkie. You'll check in every 12 hours. If you miss a check-in, we'll send in a recovery team. Dr. Winters added, we've also prepared a series of questions. At each checkpoint, you'll answer them and document your responses. They're designed to test for cognitive impairment, hallucinations, time distortion, any of the symptoms the previous squad experienced. They handed me a sealed envelope containing the questions, to be opened only at the checkpoints. One more thing, Captain Morrison said seriously. The men who came back from that forest, they all said the same thing near the end. They said they were warned. They found messages carved into trees, turn back, leave while you can, they're watching. We don't know who left those messages or when. But if you see them, take them seriously. You think someone else is out there? Other soldiers? We don't know what's out there, Dr. Winters said. That's why we're sending you. At 0900 hours, I stood at the edge of Training Area 7. The access point was a simple break in the tree line, marked only by a faded wooden post with the number 7 carved into it. Beyond lay dense forest, white pine, paper birch, red oak, their leaves a mixture of green and autumn gold. The forest looked perfectly normal. Birds sang in the branches. A light breeze rustled the leaves. Nothing sinister, nothing threatening. Just woods, like thousands of other forests across America. So why did every instinct tell me not to enter? I checked my gear one last time, chambered around in my M1 Garand, and stepped into the forest. The change was immediate and subtle. The temperature dropped noticeably, not dramatically, just enough to make me aware of it. The birdsong faded, not cutting off suddenly but diminishing gradually until there was only silence. The breeze died completely. I took out my compass to verify my bearing, northeast toward Checkpoint Alpha, approximately 3 miles distant. The needle pointed steady and true. I marked the position of the access point, a distinctive lightning-struck oak, so I could find my way back, then started walking. The first hour was unremarkable. I navigated carefully, using terrain features to track my progress. The forest here was old growth, never logged, with trees that must have been standing when the first European settlers arrived. The undergrowth was thick but manageable, mostly ferns and low shrubs. I saw evidence of wildlife, deer tracks in soft soil, claw marks on tree bark from a bear, the neat piles of pine cone scales left by squirrels. All normal. All reassuring. It was during the second hour that I noticed something odd. I'd been using a fallen log as a landmark, a massive white pine that had toppled years ago, now covered in moss and mushrooms. I passed it, continued northeast for what I estimated was half a mile, then stopped to check my compass. Northeast, exactly as before. Good. I continued walking for another 10 minutes, then froze. The fallen log was directly ahead of me. The exact same log, with the same pattern of mushrooms, the same moss growth. I would have sworn I'd left it behind. I checked my compass again. Still pointing northeast. I looked up at the sun, filtering through the canopy, still in the right position for mid-morning. But somehow, I'd walked in what felt like a straight line and ended up back where I'd been. The forest wouldn't let them leave. I pushed the thought aside. There had to be a rational explanation. Maybe I'd gotten turned around without realizing it. Maybe the terrain was more confusing than I'd anticipated. I marked the fallen log with my knife, 3 parallel cuts in the wood, so I'd know if I encountered it again. Then I pulled out my compass, verified my bearing one more time, and continued northeast, this time paying careful attention to every tree, every rock, every landmark. 30 minutes later, I found my knife marks on the fallen log. I'd walked in a perfect circle. Or the forest had moved around me. I forced myself to stay calm, to think logically. Disorientation was common in dense forests, especially for people who weren't experienced. But I was experienced. I'd navigated worse terrain than this. I decided to try a different approach. Instead of relying solely on the compass, I'd use the sun. It was now almost noon, the sun should be nearly due south. If I kept it directly behind me, I'd move north. Simple, foolproof. I walked for an hour, checking frequently to ensure the sun remained at my back. The forest here was darker, the canopy thicker. I had to push through increasingly dense undergrowth, branches catching at my uniform. But I was making progress. I had to be. Then I saw the tree. It stood alone in a small clearing, a massive white oak that must have been 300 years old. But what stopped me cold were the carvings. Dozens of them, covering the trunk from ground level to above my head. They weren't random. They were words, messages, carved by different hands at different times. Turn back. Don't go further. Leave while you can. They're watching. It took them. No way out. Some of the carvings were old, the wood withered and darkened. Others were recent, the exposed wood still pale. One message near the bottom looked like it had been carved just days ago. If you're reading this, run. Below that, in different handwriting. Checkpoint Charlie doesn't exist. My hands were shaking as I photographed the tree, making sure to capture every message clearly. This was exactly what Captain Morrison had warned me about. But who had carved these? The previous squad? Other soldiers from earlier training exercises? Or something else? I was about to continue when I noticed something on the ground near the base of the tree. I knelt down for a closer look. Dog tags. Not one set, but 3, half buried in the leaf litter. I picked them up carefully. The names were still legible. PVT Robert Hansen / 2nd Infantry Division / 1944. CPL James Mitchell / 2nd Infantry Division / 1944. PFC Thomas Reed / 2nd Infantry Division / 1943. James Mitchell was one of the men from the previous squad, one of the 2 who'd killed themselves after returning. But what about the others? I didn't recognize the names. Had there been other squads? Other missions that were never reported? I pocketed the dog tags and stood up, my heart hammering. The forest around me was absolutely silent. No birds, no wind, no sounds at all except my own breathing. That's when I heard it. Marcus. A voice, distant and faint, coming from deeper in the forest. A woman's voice that I hadn't heard in years but would recognize anywhere. My mother's voice. Marcus, honey, where are you? My mother had died in 1941, 3 years ago, of pneumonia. She was buried in a cemetery in Billings, Montana, over 1,000 miles from here. She couldn't be in this forest. Marcus, I'm lost. I need you to find me, honey. Please. Every rational part of my brain screamed that this was a trick, a hallucination, exactly what had happened to the previous squad. But hearing her voice, the exact tone, the exact inflection she'd used when I was a child and had wandered too far from home, it cut through logic like a knife. I'm scared, Marcus. It's getting dark. Why won't you help me? My legs started moving before I could stop them, carrying me toward the voice. I pushed through the undergrowth, branches scraping my face, following the sound of my mother calling for help. That's it, honey, you're getting closer. Just a little further. I burst into another clearing, this one larger, and stopped dead. There was a structure ahead, a small wooden building, like a hunting cabin. It shouldn't be here. No buildings were marked on my maps in this sector. But there it was, solid and real, with a door slightly ajar. Marcus, I'm inside. I'm so cold. Please help me. The voice was coming from inside the cabin. Every instinct Sergeant Briggs had told me to trust was screaming at me to run. But the voice was so real, so achingly familiar. What if there was someone in there who needed help? What if I was wrong, and this was all a rational explanation, another lost soldier, radio signals causing audio hallucinations, something? I approached the cabin slowly, rifle raised, finger on the trigger. The door creaked as I pushed it open. Inside was dark, lit only by slivers of light through gaps in the walls. As my eyes adjusted, I saw the interior was filled with equipment, old military gear, backpacks, canteens, ration boxes. Everything covered in dust and spider webs, as if it had been sitting here for years. In the center of the room was a table made from rough planks. On it lay a journal, open to the last page. I approached carefully, keeping my rifle ready, scanning the shadows for any movement. The journal entry was dated October 15, 1943, over a year ago. My name is Captain William Foster, 2nd Infantry Division. If anyone finds this, know that we were lied to. Training Area 7 is not a training area. It's a trap. Something lives in this forest, something that shouldn't exist. It takes the shape of voices, of people you know, to lure you deeper. We tried to leave. We tried for days. But the forest won't let us go. The compasses don't work. The sun moves wrong. Time doesn't make sense anymore. There are 12 of us left. We started with 23. The others, it took them. One by one. Always at night. We hear them screaming, but when we search, we find nothing. Just their equipment, left behind. If you're reading this, run. Don't try to reach the checkpoints. They're bait. The whole thing is bait. Get out while you can. I don't think we're leaving this forest alive. The entry ended there. I stood in the dark cabin, my breath coming in short gasps, trying to process what I'd read. Training Area 7 wasn't what they'd told me. How many soldiers had been sent here? How many had disappeared? Marcus. The voice came from right behind me. I spun around, rifle raised, heart exploding in my chest. Nothing. The cabin was empty except for me and the abandoned gear. But the door, which I'd left open, was now closed. And outside, I could hear footsteps. Slow, measured, circling the cabin. Multiple footsteps. As if something, or several somethings, had followed me here. And they were waiting to see what I'd do next. I stood frozen in the darkness of the cabin, listening to the footsteps outside. They were methodical, patient, circling the structure in a pattern that felt almost predatory. Not the random movement of animals, but something with intent. My training kicked in. I moved away from the center of the room to the wall, putting solid wood between me and whatever was outside. Through the gaps in the logs, I could see movement, shadows passing by, tall and thin, moving with an unsettling fluidity. The footsteps stopped. Complete silence fell over the forest again, so absolute it felt like pressure against my eardrums. I waited, barely breathing, rifle aimed at the door. Then came the voice again. But this time, it wasn't my mother. "Private Webb, this is Captain Morrison. Can you hear me?" It came from outside, perfectly mimicking Morrison's voice, his tone, his cadence, the slight Massachusetts accent. "Private, we've been trying to reach you on the radio. You've missed 2 check-ins. What's your status?" I looked down at my watch. According to it, I'd only been in the forest for 3 hours. But Morrison had said check-ins were every 12 hours. Either my watch was wrong, or time was moving differently here, just like Captain Foster's journal had said. "We're sending in a recovery team to your location. Stay where you are. Help is coming." Every word was perfect, exactly how Morrison would say it. But I remembered what the previous squad had reported. We heard voices. Familiar voices. This wasn't Captain Morrison. He couldn't know where I was. The radio was still strapped to my pack, and I hadn't used it yet. "Private Webb, acknowledge." That's an order. The voice had an edge now, frustrated, more insistent. I didn't respond. I barely even breathed. After a long moment, the voice changed. Still Morrison's voice, but the tone shifted, became colder, mechanical, like someone reading from a script without understanding the words. "Come outside, Marcus. We need to see you. We need to verify you're unharmed. Open the door." The way it said we made my skin crawl. "Open the door, Marcus." The command repeated over and over, each time becoming slightly more distorted, the voice degrading like a phonograph record playing too slowly. "Open the door, Marcus." Then, suddenly, silence again. I stayed pressed against the wall, watching through the gaps. Minutes passed, 5, 10, 15. Nothing moved. No sounds came from outside. The shadows had disappeared. I had to make a decision. I couldn't stay in this cabin forever. I had limited rations, limited water. And if Captain Foster's journal was accurate, staying in one place after dark was dangerous. The others had been taken at night. I checked my watch again, 1:47 p.m. According to my calculations, I had maybe 5 hours of daylight left. I needed to use that time to find a way out of this forest, forget the checkpoints, forget the mission. Survival was the priority now. I moved to the door, listening carefully. Still nothing. I counted to 3, then yanked it open and swept outside with my rifle, scanning for threats. The clearing was empty. No footprints in the soft earth around the cabin, despite the footsteps I'd heard. No disturbed vegetation. Nothing to indicate anyone or anything had been there. But I knew what I'd heard. I wasn't hallucinating. Not yet. I pulled out my compass to get my bearings. The needle spun lazily, making slow circles, refusing to settle on any direction. Useless, just like the previous squad had said. I looked up at the sun, filtering through the canopy. It was wrong. The angle didn't match what it should be for early afternoon. It looked more like late morning, as if time had moved backward. Time doesn't make sense anymore. I forced myself to think tactically. If the compass didn't work and the sun was unreliable, I needed another method of navigation. The old scout technique: pick a distant landmark, walk toward it in a straight line, mark your path. I spotted a distinctive rock formation about 200 yards away, a cluster of large boulders stacked at an odd angle. I'd walk to that, mark it, then pick another landmark beyond it. Step by step, I'd navigate out of this place. I started walking, keeping the rock formation in sight at all times. The forest seemed to resist me, branches caught at my uniform, roots seemed to appear out of nowhere to trip me, the undergrowth grew thicker with each step. But I pushed through, determined. When I reached the boulders, I used my knife to carve an arrow into the rock pointing back the way I'd come, then turned to find my next landmark. The cabin was directly ahead of me. The same cabin I'd just left, maybe 50 yards away. I could see my own boot prints in the earth leading from its door. I'd walked in what felt like a straight line for 200 yards, and I'd ended up where I started. Panic started creeping in, real, visceral panic that I had to fight down. This wasn't possible. This defied every law of physics, every principle of navigation I'd ever learned. But it was happening. I thought about Captain Foster's words: we tried to leave. We tried for days. But the forest won't let us go. 23 men had entered this forest with him. Only 12 were left when he wrote that journal entry. And I'd found no evidence of any of them escaping. The dog tags I'd found, the abandoned equipment, it all told the same story. No one left Training Area 7. But I had to try. I couldn't just give up and wait to be taken like the others. I decided on a new approach. Instead of trying to navigate out, I'd look for other survivors. If soldiers had been sent here before, some might still be alive, hiding, surviving. There was strength in numbers. I cupped my hands around my mouth and called out, "This is Private First Class Marcus Webb, 2nd Infantry Division. If anyone can hear me, signal your location." My voice echoed through the trees, then faded into that oppressive silence. I waited. Nothing. I tried again, louder this time. "This is PFC Webb. Is anyone out there?" This time, I got a response. "Help! Over here. Please help." A man's voice, young, terrified, coming from deeper in the forest to my left. Not my voice, not anyone I knew, a stranger's voice calling for help. Every instinct told me it was another trick, another lure. But what if it wasn't? What if there was someone out there who genuinely needed help? I moved cautiously in the direction of the voice, rifle ready, eyes scanning the trees for any movement. "Please. I'm injured. I can't walk." The voice was closer now, maybe 100 yards ahead. I pushed through a thick stand of birch trees and emerged into another clearing. What I found made me stop cold. Equipment. Scattered everywhere. Rifles, backpacks, helmets, canteens, dozens of items spread across the clearing like the aftermath of a battle. But there were no bodies, no blood, no signs of a fight. Just equipment, abandoned or dropped. I moved closer, examining the items. They were from different time periods, some looked new, others were rusted and weathered. I picked up a helmet and checked the markings inside, 2nd Infantry Division, 1942. 2 years ago. I found another rifle, the wood stock swollen and cracked from moisture. A backpack with rations inside that had expired in 1943. Dog tags by the dozen, scattered like seeds. This was a graveyard, not of bodies, but of belongings. Everything left behind by soldiers who'd never made it out. Please, help me. The voice was closer now, coming from the far side of the clearing. I could see something there, a figure lying on the ground near the tree line. I approached slowly, weapon raised. It was a soldier, wearing a 2nd Infantry Division uniform like mine, lying on his side with his back to me. He wasn't moving. "Hey," I called out, stopping about 20 feet away. "Can you hear me?" No response. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe that I could see. "I'm coming closer. Don't make any sudden movements." I walked forward carefully, keeping my rifle aimed at the figure. Something was wrong. The uniform looked odd, too clean, too new, like it had just been issued. And the way the soldier was lying, the position of the limbs, it looked staged. I was 10 feet away when I saw it. The back of the soldier's head was wrong. Not injured, not damaged, wrong. The shape was off, the proportions not quite human. Like something was wearing the uniform, trying to look like a soldier but not quite getting the details right. I took a step back, my finger tightening on the trigger. The figure twitched. Then, slowly, it began to stand. The movement was unnatural, too fluid, joints bending in ways they shouldn't. As it rose, I realized how tall it was. Too tall. The uniform hung oddly on its frame, like a costume on something not built to wear it. It turned to face me. I will remember that face for the rest of my life. It was almost human, but wrong in ways I couldn't articulate. The proportions were off, eyes too large, mouth too wide, skin too smooth. It wore the soldier's face like a mask that didn't quite fit. And it smiled at me. Not a human smile. Something that had learned to smile by watching humans but didn't understand what a smile meant. "Help me," it said, the voice now clearly not coming from its mouth but from somewhere else, like a ventriloquist's trick. "Please help me, Marcus." I fired. The M1 Garand kicked against my shoulder, the shot thunderously loud in the silent forest. The bullet hit center mass, right where a man's heart would be. The thing didn't even flinch. The smile widened. I fired again. And again. Each shot hitting home, each doing absolutely nothing. The thing started walking toward me, its movements becoming more fluid, more confident, as if it was learning how to move properly in real time. I turned and ran. I crashed through the forest, branches whipping my face, roots trying to trip me. Behind me, I could hear it following, not running, just walking at that same steady, patient pace. Because it knew something I was just realizing, there was nowhere to run to. I burst through the undergrowth into yet another clearing and stopped, gasping for breath. The cabin was ahead of me. The same damned cabin. No matter which direction I ran, no matter how far I went, I always ended up back here. I ran to the door, slammed it behind me, and looked for something to barricade it with. I dragged the heavy table over, wedging it against the door. Then I moved to the back corner of the cabin, rifle trained on the entrance, trying to control my breathing. The thing appeared at the gaps in the walls. I could see it through the cracks, standing just outside, watching. Still wearing that wrong smile. "Marcus," it said, the voice now a grotesque parody of my mother's. "Why are you hiding? Don't you want to help your mother?" "You're not my mother," I said, surprised at how steady my voice was. "No," it agreed, the voice shifting to something else, something that didn't belong to any human throat, like wind through hollow trees. "But she called for you before the end. In the hospital. When the fever took her. She called your name. Did you know that?" I hadn't known that. I'd been at basic training when she died. My father wrote to tell me she'd passed peacefully in her sleep. He'd said nothing about fever, nothing about her calling for me. Unless this thing was lying. Unless it was just trying to get a reaction. What are you? I demanded. We have been here for a very long time, it said, the voice becoming multiple voices layered over each other. Before your kind came. Before the cities and the camps and the wars. This forest is ours. But your people keep coming. Keep trying to take it. So we make them stay. The soldiers who disappeared, you took them. They came into our territory. They cut our trees. They marked our lands. So yes, we took them. We take everyone who comes here. Through the gaps, I could see more figures now. More things wearing soldier uniforms like poorly fitted costumes. A dozen of them, maybe more, surrounding the cabin in a loose circle. What do you want? I asked. To be left alone. But you never leave us alone. So we make sure you never leave at all. The sun was getting lower. I could see the light changing, shadows growing longer. And I remembered Captain Foster's journal, always at night. We hear them screaming. When darkness fell, the cabin wouldn't protect me. I had maybe 2 hours. I forced myself to think clearly, to analyze the situation tactically. These things, whatever they were, had rules. They lured people with voices. They couldn't directly harm me while I was in the cabin, otherwise they'd have already broken in. They were strongest at night. But they also made mistakes. The fake soldiers' proportions had been wrong. The voice mimicry deteriorated the longer it went on. They were good at deception, but not perfect. And Captain Foster had written his journal. Which meant he'd survived long enough to write it. Which meant survival was possible, at least temporarily. I searched the cabin more thoroughly. Besides the equipment scattered around, I found other items, several water canteens. I tested one carefully. The water seemed clean, ration boxes that hadn't completely spoiled, extra ammunition for various rifles, and more journals. I opened one at random. The handwriting was shaky. Day 11, Corporal James Mitchell, 2nd Infantry. They took Hayes last night. We heard him screaming for hours. Not human screams, something worse. This morning we found his uniform folded neatly outside the cabin, like he'd taken it off and walked away. But there was no body. No blood. Nothing. The things outside, they're learning. They used to just mimic voices badly. Now they look like us. Almost. If you don't look too closely. Preston went outside yesterday because one of them looked exactly like Lieutenant Foster. By the time we realized it wasn't him, Preston was gone. I flipped to the last entry. Day 16, I'm the last one. Everyone else is gone. The things come right up to the cabin now. They press their faces against the gaps in the walls and watch me. They whisper things. True things. Things they shouldn't know. They told me about my wife, about my son, about the day I almost died in training. How do they know these things? I found the lieutenant's journal. He said not to go outside at night. But it doesn't matter. Cabin or forest, they'll take you eventually. They're patient. They have all the time in the world. I'm going to make a run for it at first light. Try to reach the perimeter. If I can just get to the fence line, maybe I can get out. I know I'm probably writing my own death sentence, but I can't stay here any longer. If someone finds this, don't come looking for me. Don't come to this forest at all. Tell the brass to burn the whole place down. Salt the earth. Something. But don't send more men here. We're just feeding it. There was no date on the last entry, but the paper was recent. This journal had been written weeks ago, maybe days. Mitchell had been with the previous squad, the squad that had made it out. Or had they? Maybe some had made it out, but others. I heard a sound outside. Scraping. Multiple somethings dragging across the cabin's exterior walls. Through the gaps, I saw them. The things were closer now, just inches from the walls, peering in. There were dozens of them, all wearing stolen faces and uniforms. Some looked more human than others. Some barely tried to pretend. Marcus, they said in unison, their voices overlapping. Come outside. It's time. Time for what? To join the others. To stay. To become part of the forest. What happens to the people you take? Silence. Then one of them spoke, its voice almost sad. We keep them. Forever. In the trees, in the earth, in the water. They never leave. They become part of this place. Part of us. That's not going to happen to me. You don't have a choice. No one does. The forest decides who stays. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows through the trees. Maybe an hour of daylight left, maybe less. I checked my ammunition. 4 rounds left in the M1 Garand, plus 2 extra clips in my pack. Not that bullets seemed to do anything to these things. I had my combat knife, my rations, my water. And I had one other thing, the radio. I pulled out the SCR 536, extended the antenna, and turned it on. Static filled the cabin, loud and harsh. I adjusted the frequency to the one Captain Morrison had specified. Base, this is Scout Webb. Do you copy? Over. More static. Then, faintly, a voice, Webb, copy, status, over. The transmission was badly degraded, but it was there. Real. Human. Base, I'm in serious trouble. Training Area 7 is hostile. Previous reports were accurate. Requesting immediate extraction. Over. Can't, interference, location, over. I don't know my exact location. Compass isn't working. I've been. The radio died. Just went completely dead, as if the batteries had suddenly drained. But they were fresh batteries. They should have lasted for days. I looked up. The things outside were pressed against the walls now, all of them, creating a living cage around the cabin. And they were smiling those wrong smiles. No talking to the outside, they said in unison. No one can help you. No one can find you. You're ours now. The sun touched the horizon. I had to make a decision. Stay in the cabin and wait for them to come for me in the darkness, or make a run for it while there was still light. Neither option was good. But at least if I ran, I was doing something. I gathered what I could carry: rifle, ammunition, knife, 1 canteen, a few ration bars, and Captain Foster's journal. I left the rest. If I made it out, maybe someone could use the information. If I didn't, well, it wouldn't matter. I moved to the door, my hand on the barricade. The things outside had gone quiet. I couldn't see them through the gaps anymore. That was somehow worse than when they were visible. I counted down from 3, then shoved the table aside, yanked the door open, and ran. The clearing was empty, or appeared to be. I ran straight across, heading for the thickest part of the forest, figuring that if I couldn't see them, maybe they'd have harder time seeing me. I made it about 50 yards before I heard them. Not footsteps this time. Worse. A sound like wind through leaves, but forming words, coming from every direction at once. Run, Marcus, run. We love watching you run. They all run at first. Then they realize. There's nowhere to go. I ignored the voices and kept moving, pushing through the undergrowth, using every trick I knew to move quickly and quietly. I climbed over fallen logs, waded through a small creek, changed direction multiple times. And then I saw it, a fence. A chain-link fence, maybe 8 feet high, topped with barbed wire. It appeared through the trees like a mirage, stretching left and right as far as I could see. This had to be the perimeter of Training Area 7. If I could get over it, I'd be out. I'd be free. I ran for it, hope surging in my chest. I was 10 feet from the fence when I saw what was hanging on it. Uniforms. Dozens of them. Hung on the fence like trophies, swaying slightly in a breeze I couldn't feel. Empty uniforms, perfectly arranged, as if invisible men were standing at attention. And dog tags. Hundreds of them, tied to the chain link, clinking softly against each other. This wasn't the perimeter fence. Or if it was, they'd made sure no one could reach it and feel hope. This was a monument to everyone who'd tried to escape. Everyone who'd failed. Now you understand, the voices said from behind me. There is no out. There is only here. Forever here. I turned. They stood in a semicircle, maybe 30 of them, those things wearing human faces and uniforms. Some looked almost perfect now. Others had given up pretending. The sun was setting behind them, casting their long shadows across the forest floor toward me. Last light, Marcus, they said. When the sun goes down, you're ours. I raised my rifle, knowing it was futile but doing it anyway. I'm not going without a fight. We know. That's the best part. The fighting. The struggling. The hope dying slowly. It makes the taking so much sweeter. The sun slipped below the horizon. The forest plunged into twilight. And then, in the growing darkness, I heard something I hadn't heard since entering Training Area 7. A real sound. Mechanical. Distant but growing closer. An engine. A vehicle. The things heard it too. Their heads turned in unison toward the sound, their movements suddenly agitated, uncertain. Headlights appeared through the trees, bouncing along what must have been an old logging road. Then more headlights. Multiple vehicles, coming fast. A voice boomed through the forest, amplified by a loudspeaker, Private Webb. If you can hear this, signal your location. We're coming for you. Captain Morrison's voice. The real one. I could tell the difference now. The thing started backing away, moving into the shadows between the trees. They were retreating. Why were they retreating? I pulled out my flashlight and pointed it at the sky, clicking it on and off in the signal pattern for SOS. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. The vehicles changed course, heading toward me. The things were disappearing now, melting into the forest, their voices fading to whispers. This doesn't change anything. You'll be back. They always come back. The forest always wins. Then they were gone. 2 military trucks burst into the clearing, followed by a jeep. Soldiers jumped out, rifles ready, forming a defensive perimeter. Captain Morrison climbed out of the jeep, along with Dr. Winters. Webb. Morrison called. Are you injured? No, sir, I managed, my voice hoarse. But we need to leave. Now. Before. We know. Get in the truck. We're pulling back to base immediately. Soldiers helped me into the back of the nearest truck. As we started moving, I looked back at the forest. In the deepening darkness, I could see them. Hundreds of them now, standing at the tree line, watching us leave. Silent. Patient. Waiting. The truck convoy drove through the night, not stopping until we were miles from Training Area 7, back at the main base of Camp Hale. Only then did I start to believe I'd actually made it out. But as we pulled through the gates, I realized something that made my blood run cold. I still had Captain Foster's journal in my pack. And tucked in the last page, where I hadn't noticed before, was a note in different handwriting. You made it out. Congratulations. But it doesn't matter. Once you've been marked, once you've seen what we are, you carry us with you. We're in your memories now. In your dreams. And one day, you'll come back. They always do. We'll be waiting, Marcus. We have all the time in the world. The debriefing lasted hours. Dr. Winters and Captain Morrison questioned me repeatedly about the entities, the cabin, everything I'd witnessed. Finally, they revealed the truth. Training Area 7 isn't what we told you, Dr. Winters said, sliding photographs across the table. In 1921, 37 lumberjacks vanished from this forest. No bodies. No evidence. The indigenous tribes called it Mashkikiwayan, bad medicine place. They said spirits collected people there. How many soldiers have disappeared? I asked. 43, Morrison said quietly. Over 2 years. He showed me another photograph of me, taken from the forest, with the entities surrounding the cabin. On the back, marked October 28, 1944. Every survivor who's been marked felt compelled to return, Dr. Winters explained. 2 killed themselves within a month. The third went back voluntarily 6 weeks ago. We never found him. They moved me to a secured facility. For 15 days, I fought the compulsion growing inside me, an overwhelming need to return to the forest. On day 15, I tried to escape. They caught me, sedated me, put me in restraints. Dr. Winters came to my cell the next morning. You're going back whether we want it or not, he said. So tomorrow, we're going in with a full platoon. 40 men, heavily armed. We'll confront them, try to free the trapped soldiers. At dawn, we entered Training Area 7. The forest worked on us immediately. Men heard voices, family members, friends, people they loved. Within an hour, we'd lost 12 soldiers to the compulsion, leaving guards behind to restrain them. When we reached the clearing, the cabin was gone. Only old foundation stones remained. Then they appeared. Hundreds of entities surrounded us, wearing stolen faces and uniforms from different eras. We fired. Bullets passed through them harmlessly. One stepped forward, the same one from before. You brought us more, it said, smiling. How generous. Release our soldiers, Morrison demanded. This is our territory. Your laws mean nothing here. It turned to me. But Marcus, we'll give you a choice. Stay and join them, or take one prisoner with you. Only one. You choose who goes free. The trees became transparent. Inside each one, I saw trapped people, soldiers, loggers, trappers from centuries past. All conscious. All aware. All suffering. Captain Foster, suspended in an oak. Corporal Mitchell, embedded in the earth. Dozens of others, frozen in endless torment. How do I choose? I whispered. Take your time, the entity said. We're patient. I walked through the clearing, seeing their pleading eyes. How could I condemn everyone else by saving one person? I turned back to the entity. I'm not choosing, I said. And I'm not staying either. Its smile faltered. What? I won't play your game. But I know what you are now. I pulled out Captain Foster's journal. Your territorial spirits, tied to this forest. But forests die. Land changes. You need people to remember you, to fear you, to keep coming. That's why you mark survivors, to spread the stories. The entities shifted, agitated. What happens if we burn this forest? Cut down every tree? Do you die? Or just fade? I pressed. You're talking instead of taking us because you're afraid. The army doesn't surrender. Eventually, we'll figure out how to beat you. Enough. The shout came from all of them at once, shaking leaves from trees. You want to test us? We can make them suffer. Forever. The trapped people writhed in their prisons, screaming silently. No, I said. Here's my offer. Let them all go, every person you've taken, and in exchange, I stay. The clearing erupted in protests from my platoon. Webb, no. Morrison shouted. But I ignored them. That's the deal. You want someone interesting? Someone who understands your rules? Take me. Let the others go. The entity studied me for a long moment, then smiled. We accept. One by one, the trapped people were released. They stumbled from the trees, Captain Foster, Corporal Mitchell, the loggers from 1921, soldiers from the past 2 years. All freed. The platoon gathered them, supporting them, preparing to evaluate. Make sure no one else comes here, I told Dr. Winters. That's the whole point. We'll find a way to get you back, he promised. No. Don't send anyone else. That's my last order. Sergeant Briggs saluted. It's been an honor, Webb. I watched my comrades disappear through the trees, carrying the survivors to safety. The entities closed in around me. What happens now? I asked. You sacrificed yourself willingly, the entity said. True sacrifice is powerful. You won't be trapped like the others. You'll become something different. A guardian. Part of us, but still yourself. You'll help us keep this forest safe. For how long? Forever, Marcus. You're part of the forest now. I felt my consciousness expanding, merging with the trees, the earth, the very air. But I remained aware, still myself, just more. The entity's final words echoed through my new existence. Thank you for understanding, Marcus Webb. Now you'll help us make sure no one else has to. Report filed by Dr. Samuel Winters, November 15, 1944. Operation Recovery was a qualified success. We extracted 43 U.S. soldiers and 12 civilian lumberjacks from Training Area 7. All survivors are receiving medical and psychiatric care. Private First Class Marcus Webb sacrificed himself to secure their release. His actions saved dozens of lives and provided invaluable intelligence about the phenomena within Training Area 7. Recommendation: Training Area 7 is to be permanently closed. No further military operations in this sector. The area should be designated as restricted wilderness, with warning signs posted at all access points. PFC Webb's family will be told he died in a training accident. His sacrifice must remain classified. May God have mercy on his soul.